Hey guys, it's Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for tuning in today. This video is going to be part of my monthly wrap-up for the month of May, and I'm doing it differently this time because I like to feature my top 2 books and my bottom 2 books, and I thought it would be better to do it in a separate video, and then the remaining, like, in the middle of the road books will be in a separate video. So just in case you're really just interested in like the very good books and the ones I don't really recommend, it's in its own video, which I think will be kind of helpful. Maybe? Do you like it this way? But we are going to do that today, and then you'll see this exact same outfit and setup for the remaining part of my monthly wrap-up. And so I have to apologize for not posting a lot recently, mostly because there's just been a lot of things going on in my life. I'm not really going to go into it in this video, but just to let you know, that's what's been happening. It's just been a crazy life. Now, this video is actually going to be my top 3 and then my bottom 2. I'm doing 3 because one is in a series, and if you haven't read the first one, I'm not going to try to spoil it for you, so I can't talk too much about it. But I do have 3 top books and then 2 bottom books, and in total I read 11 books for the month, so I'm very proud of that. So the remaining 6 books that I've read will be in a separate video. Let's just get going. The first one I want to talk about is in my bottom 2, and that is The Female Persuasion by Meg Wolitzer, and I picked this one up because it was the book of the month for the Barnes & Noble book club, and I had really high expectations, and I've never read anything from her, but this one I did not even finish. I was just extremely bored. In general, it's about Greer, who is in college, and she goes to a seminar where this feminist is speaking, and they hit it off, and she's offered a job in her office and has some side story about her and her boyfriend, and I read about half of it, but there's just so many boring spaces. There's just a lot of description. There's a lot of just pondering thoughts. And the story didn't even get very far. Like, it didn't really move at all. And I just can't read that far into a book without there being some type of like plot twist or some type of just like exciting bit happening. But it really was pretty dull for me, and so I just didn't really enjoy it. I think on Goodreads right now it only has like 3 stars, which is unfortunate because you'd think like with it being a Barnes & Noble book club book that it would have some pretty good reviews, but I'm not the only one who thinks it's a little dull. And I feel like all the feminist type themes in the book aren't really new information or really very powerful. Nothing seemed to scream at me or really seem bold enough. So I just, in general, was just like, eh. And life's too short to read books that I'm just not liking. So yeah, that one was a no for me. Next we have Sophie Jordan's Firelight, and I read her Reign of Shadow series last month, or in April, and I wanted to read something else of hers because I did like her writing, but I didn't really enjoy some of the story in Reign of Shadows. And so this one I had pretty high expectations because when you read about it, it's about Jacinda, who is a Draki, who is descended from dragons, and she's a shapeshifter, and she shifts into dragons, and the first few chapters she's actually flying, and there's like a little chase in the very beginning, and it's very suspenseful, and it definitely drew me in. The whole concept of like a human that's actually a dragon, like that is pretty badass. And around chapter 4, her mother gets really worried about what they have planned for her, and so she ends up taking her way into the desert because she wants to kill her inner dragon. And from there on, it turns into like high school drama, and it becomes her instantly having a love interest, and the whole story is about her trying to avoid becoming fully human. And I feel like there could have been so much more with the storyline with the Draki background. I just think it would be really cool about her being a dragon slash shapeshifter, and I just feel like that would be a really interesting storyline, but it instantly turned into just high school drama, love interest, nothing exciting, very predictable. I read it during my 24-hour readathon, and it just wasn't exciting. I was just hoping for so much more, and I also feel like the writing in this one was very just middle grade. I feel like every description she says is very similar. Whenever she sees the guy, she almost uses verbatim like how she's feeling. So it's nothing like there was new feelings or any type of real descriptions. I feel like everything was very repetitive, and I just didn't really enjoy it. So that is why I only gave it like 2 stars. I feel like it could have just been so much more, and it wasn't, unfortunately. Moving on to my top 3, I have Unwholly, which is part of the Unwind series. This is the second book, and it is just as good as the first one. I'm not going to give away any details because it really starts off just a couple months after the first book, so you really just dive right into the main characters. There are a couple new characters, which I think makes it a little bit interesting. You have Starkey, who is a child that was storked, so he was one who was given away as a baby, and he has some issues and he's trying to take over where they are. And then we also have Cam, who is like this new species where he is the first person to be completely unwound products or pieces of other people, and he's his own person. It's just a really strange situation. It makes you really think, like, morally, is it okay, is it not okay? And it's just a twist after twist and so much suspense, and it was so good. I actually think I prefer the second book over the first book, just because there's just a lot more to it, and I really did enjoy how she has new characters, so it kept it interesting and it really progressed the storyline, and it left you off at like a serious cliffhanger, so I definitely need to read the third book because so good. Next we have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. So this book is about Star, who is 16 years old. She is African American, and she is kind of torn between two worlds because she is torn by the place she lives and where she grew up, which is kind of the lower part of town, and then she also goes to school in the upper part of town in like the suburbs. So she has like this two-world situation going on, and in the very beginning of the book she is actually witness to one of her best friends getting murdered by a cop or shot by a cop, and she's the witness, and it's just so current and so relevant and definitely gives you some other type of perspective. It really puts you into another person's shoes of what's going on in those type of situations. Now, I grew up in a very white state, really. I grew up in Maine where only 1% of the population is African American, so to have that different type of view really does help you, and I feel like this is a book that's so relevant and could definitely fit a lot of people. It definitely can make a lot of different people think, and it just shows how racism is still in our society, and Star is so empowering and so moving, and I feel like the dialogue in the book is even still relevant, and just actually when you read it you can see these people speaking those words or hear those people speaking those words. I just think between like the dialogue and the current events, it's just such a relevant book and such a good read, and it was easy to read as well, but it really made you think. Really did enjoy this book. The top book that I read this month, and I am gonna say it was my top book because it is one that after I read it I was like, they're so good, and I just found out there's a sequel. Now this book is Alice by Christina Henry, and I did do a whole separate video on it because it is fantastic. Obviously you can tell it's an Alice in Wonderland rendition, but it's very dark and it is very rape heavy, so if that's like a trigger to you, just to let you know, it is very rape heavy. Now it starts off with Alice, who is in an asylum and she's been there for 10 years. She meets her neighbor, who is what we know as the Mad Hatter. His name is Hatcher, who has a really dark history. But between the two of them, they escape the asylum because it caught on fire, and they escape into the old city, which is like this really dark, lots of bosses that control the city and a lot of just evil, and the book is so dark. There's so much blood, there's so much gore. It's such a different aspect of Alice in Wonderland, and even though it's Alice in Wonderland, it's not overly magical, which is what I liked. I know a lot of like the metaphors were kind of like, when I think about it, it's like Disney inspired, like falling down a rabbit hole was actually them like jumping into the water, or just things like that. Like it had little bits of the original story in there, which I really enjoyed, but it was really just metaphors of what was happening. And again, it's not overly magical. There are some magic in it, but I feel like the core of the story is actually like the darkness and the evil and the killing. It's very gory, but I liked it, and it left you on a cliffhanger, but in my mind I was just like, okay, that's what happened, but there's a sequel and now I need to go get it. So I absolutely loved it. Yeah, I totally love that book, and it's just I don't normally read things that are that dark, but I liked it, so there's that. Now that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I'll do a second part, which is the remaining books that I read in the month of May. So thank you all so much for coming by today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.